in England at the time, the Whigs and the Tories. And something that's much discussed at the time of the debates over ratification of the Constitution is the role of factionalism. Whether you can have a Republican government if groups form that for purposes of forming political parties or factions. We'll talk about that again on Wednesday, but I just want to point out that New York is one of the places that pioneers factions, and some of the arguments that factions are okay will come from New Yorkers. Okay, I want to go quickly through Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, again, it's a completely different place from New York. I don't want to imply that it's the same, but it does belong in the same category because it's a place that grows up again in the 1680s. It grows up with a great deal of religious freedom and a lot of diversity, just as New York had something like apparently 18 languages and 18 religions in that very small part of Manhattan that we saw at the time that the English took it from the Dutch. A very large number of pietist sects and strange Protestant groups were welcomed to Pennsylvania. Quakerism, which is the religion of William Penn, begins in the 1640s in this period of Civil War, or period after the Civil War, when the Puritans were in charge, when Oliver Cromwell ran the Protectorate. This was a period of religious freedom and a lot of religious experimentation. Quakers and several other sects, like the Diggers and the Fifth Monarchy Men and the Ranters, all came out of that. The Quakers are still around. I don't think we have very many Ranters, or at least people who don't. Not a lot of people call themselves Ranters anyway. On the continent, in Germany, there's a similar upwelling of so-called pietism, new forms of Protestantism, and the ones that wound up in Germany are, for example, Mennonites, whose descendants are the Amish. They're arriving here in the 1680s. As I mentioned, Penn is an unusual person, a devout Quaker. The Quakers are certainly a small minority, but Quakers are mostly poor, and Penn is well-connected. Quakers are mostly illiterate, and Penn is well-educated. Quakers are pacifists. Penn is the son of a naval hero who was a good friend of Charles II, who was a great persecutor of Protestants. Penn is a democratic theorist, since he strongly believes in democracy, and yet he is, at the same time, an aristocrat. I think most unusual thing about his is he's the son of a naval hero and devout Quaker. His family is very establishment, and he is very, very much a rebel. But it's this friendship with the king that makes him the proprietor of his colony. The king literally gives him Pennsylvania in return for this, to retire this debt that he has through his father of 16,000 pounds. All right, I'd like to just skip ahead then, because I think in many ways the southern states require a little more explanation. But before leaving Pennsylvania, I do want to say one thing about it that distinguishes it both from New England and from New York, and that's the land holding system. Most people in Pennsylvania are small, independent farmers. They don't have the New England towns that we described. You don't have the large landholders that remain from the patroon system or characteristic of the Chesapeake. Pennsylvania is very much a small place for small farmers, and it's known at the time as the best poor man's country. Okay, so South Carolina, the Deep South. Right? This is our fourth region, and this one, not surprisingly, has more in common with the Chesapeake than it has with New England. Its main characteristic is that it is very highly dependent on slavery. It's not, in fact, it didn't stumble into slavery the way the Chesapeake did. It didn't develop slavery as an outgrowth of indentured servitude. South Carolina, like so many colonies, did not turn out as planned. The biggest irony, perhaps, of South Carolina is that while it turns out, winds up being a slave plantation society, wholly dependent on slavery, with even a slave majority, very much like the Sugar Islands we talked about. So much, in fact, like the Sugar Islands, its demography even looks like the Sugar Islands. It has a preponderance of males, and it doesn't have a rapid population growth the way Virginia, for example, does. But the biggest irony is that, despite that, that's how it turned out. The Constitution is written by none other than John Locke, this Enlightenment figure that I mentioned before, who is very clearly not a believer in slavery. He writes in the second treatise on government, quote, "Every man has property in his own person. This nobody has any right to but himself. The labor of his body and the work of his hands, we may say, are his property." I have mentioned, we'll come back to Locke again when we talk about the Declaration of Independence. But Locke's teachings, really, it's very hard to make Locke into a supporter of slavery, and he isn't. The Constitution of South Carolina says nothing about slavery at all. It was not intended to be a slave colony. It was intended to be a colony of yeoman farmers who would produce food and perhaps lumber to supply Barbados, right? Which brings us back to that triangular trade, the Atlantic system. Right? In the late 1600s, when this colony was being planned, triangle trade was happening already. It was going to grow much bigger, and as it does, South Carolina is definitely going to benefit from it, just not quite the way it was planned. Barbados at this time had already chopped down all of its lumber and was growing sugar. Its land was too valuable for crops, so South Carolina looked like a good place. As a result, South Carolina was also unique in being founded by people from Barbados. In other words, the original settlers did not come from Europe. They were Europeans and slaves who came from Barbados. So culturally speaking, they imported a rather different set of beliefs than you would have expected. Ultimately, South Carolina first begins as a very successful cattle ranching operation. It's possible to simply let cows roam around South Carolina. You don't need any barns. The weather is mild enough. The cattle will multiply, and you just need enough slaves to round them up. What this means is that the first cowboys in America were, in fact, black slaves in South Carolina. The cattle industry eventually gives way to rice. Well, actually, before it gives way to rice, there's a brief period in which naval stores come into play. Naval stores are turpentine and tar, things that are made out of pine trees, which South Carolina has an abundance of. So in chopping down the pine trees, ultimately settle on rice. Rice is a very labor-intensive commodity to grow, and one where the expertise probably comes from Africa. Europeans didn't really know about rice at this time, but Africans did. So it's likely that the people who first grew rice were slaves. It's certain that after a short time, everybody who grew rice was a slave. It made for some of the very much the wealthiest people in America. from this chart, you can see how the trajectory of population, well, at least of the slave, of free and slave population here. It's a little hard to read, but the solid line is the slave population. It's starting about 1700, looking at roughly 2,500 slaves and maybe 3,000 free whites. The free whites are shown along the dotted line here. And the increase is respectable. That's pretty rapid population increase. But the increase of slaves is even more rapid. And by even before 1710, but around 1707, the line showing the population of African slaves crosses that showing the free white population. You can see that the line spread out thereafter. Okay, and the slave importation figures are shown there as bars, and they roughly coincide with economic events that make slavery more appealing, such as when the navigation acts are changed to allow rice to be sold directly to the continent instead of imported to Europe. But what this leads to is something very different from what we saw in the Chesapeake. In the Chesapeake, if we look at this, the dotted line will always be well above the solid line. There was no question of a slave majority in Virginia. They may have worried from time to time about it, but it never happened. Living in a society where the majority of people are enslaved, that's got to be different from living in a society where a minority are. And in fact, in some places, the differences are quite extreme. St. James, Goose Creek, for example, or St. Andrews County. Some of these counties, the slave majorities are quite significant. And at different times of the year, the slave majorities are also higher because most of the rice is grown in these lowland, swampy areas, and these are full of malaria. And malaria is not something you want, so the slave owners tend to run away to Charleston during the summer months and leave and leave a few whites in charge of the slaves. So it's very much like the Sugar Islands. And because slave importation remains high, there's not only a majority of slaves, but there's also a larger percentage than in other places in North America of African slaves born in Africa who still speak African languages. The result of that is that even today, there are, in some of these islands, there are speakers of something called Gullah, which is a dialect of Pidgin composed of English and several African languages. Gullah is a short form of Angola. And it's of great interest to linguists, one of the African survivals, cultural survivals from this period. Again, it's South Carolina where that sort of thing can happen because it requires both a majority of slave and constant replenishment from Africa. So the result of all this is a system that becomes consistently less pleasant for slaves. The early period, when they're raising cattle, slaves have very little autonomy. They're out there with the cows. Rice is much less fun. And the low fertility and high slave importation rates also mean that there are a high proportion of young adult males. And that's just never a good thing. As we move towards the middle of the 1700s, South Carolina experiences the Stono Rebellion, which is not by any means unique among slave society. It's the largest rebellion in what became the United States. And it's something that made white South Carolinians even more paranoid. But even leading up to that rebellion, there's plenty of evidence of fear and growing fear. Starting in these aren't exactly in order, but we can see in the history that South Carolina tries to impose taxes to tax slaves to subsidize white immigration. So they're worried about the preponderance of slaves in the population. They even encourage convict migration, and that's pretty unusual. You won't find Virginians ever doing that. And in Pennsylvania, for example, Benjamin Franklin has all kinds of very crude things to say about the practice of he likens it to emptying their outhouses on our tables. They pass a bill here to require 1 to 10 white-black ratio on all plantations. And that, again, is addressing these problems mainly that are occurring in the summer. And there are lots of repressions. You can tighten down. Slaves cannot carry firearms. Slaves are still part of the South Carolina militia until at least 1708, which is also interesting but consistent with most slave societies. There are fines for letting slaves plant for themselves. Remember that when you read Bogle and Engerman, they make a big deal out of slave independence, particularly in Charleston, where slaves are, where they claim a complicated economy, where slaves are artisans and so on. But you can read this either way. Either this is something that they saw happening widely, that slaves were in fact planting, they were tending their own gardens, because otherwise they wouldn't have needed to make a law against it. In 1722, there's a fine for letting slaves regulate their own work and paying the master a fee. That's exactly what Bogle and Engerman says is going on in Charleston. So maybe this is really a tax, but it's clearly happening, right? They wouldn't need to levy these fines if it weren't happening. But at the same time, it's not something that they like to see. They're banned from certain professions, and they're prohibited from ever voting. This is right. This is clamping down on free blacks. One of the problems with a society that has a lot of blacks is that sooner or later you'll have, for one reason or another, manumitted slaves. So they insist that freed slaves leave within 12 months. Eventually, after the Stono Rebellion, they will prohibit slave manumission completely. So in summary, what South Carolina develops is a system that has slavery, is dependent on slavery in the way that Virginia is. But they don't get this radical Republican ideology that we talked about with it. South Carolina brings to the revolutionary table, a unashamed pro-slavery ideology. South Carolinians will argue that slavery is a good thing, a natural thing, and the way that society should run. And ultimately, that you can draw a line from there to the Civil War, where South Carolina will, of course, be the first state to secede over this very issue. So even though they have slaves, just like Virginia, there's much less enlightenment going on here. In Virginia, you can see the angst. You can see Thomas Jefferson squirming about it, although he still has them. Nobody's squirming in South Carolina; they're just delighting in it. So it's very much a different attitude. And finally, they'll also bring to the table the very wealthiest people in America. At the time of the Revolution, right up to the Civil War, in fact, I believe it's true that the wealthiest people in America are slave owners in South Carolina. Tremendous amount of concentrated wealth in the form of people. Okay. Are there any questions about that or about the lab? We have another 2 minutes. Thank you very much.